Welcome back to Stories of Unsettling Lore, presented by the Collingwood Museum. In this series, we're sharing 4 short stories written by museum staff and volunteers and based on Collingwood lore. Parts may be historically accurate and some parts may be fictional. How much should we believe? That's up to you to decide. Now settle in and join us for our 3rd story of unsettling lore.
With a shiver, the young woman wrapped her thick woolen coat tighter around her neckline. She held it firmly against the wind and the blowing snow as she stared over the dark water below the ship's rail. Lost in dark thought, she didn't hear the footsteps behind her. "I thought I might find you here, darling," came the man's voice as her husband sidled up beside her on the ship's empty deck. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. But one look at her distraught face answered him without a single word. Was it that foolish dream again? Foolish? Her back went rigid, and tears began to well up in her eyes. Really? A doctor should have a kinder manner than this, especially toward his newly married wife. As she made to turn from him, he gently took hold of her gloved hand and spoke more kindly. "I apologize, my dearest. We are both of us very anxious. Being trapped in this weather for these past 4 days would be hard on anyone's nerves. And you know better than most how desirous I am of reaching our new home, so I may set up my practice for the good people of 𝐒𝐿, and so that we can finally build a life and a home together. I do not fault you for being nervous of the voyage. I know that you're no great swimmer and have little love for the open water. Please forgive my hasty words. But know also, Captain Burkett assures me he's done this trip countless times before, and always in the utmost of safety. A little weather is not beyond his capabilities. You misunderstand me, husband, and my nightly terrors. It is not myself for whom I'm deathly afraid. It is for you, and for every soul who would set sail on this cursed boat. In my vision, I've seen all on board, beset by a gigantic wave, struggling for their lives in the icy water of the bay, with a tremendous weight, always pressing down. We must not leave on this boat." These last words were cracked with a building panic. "Why will you not believe me, husband? The others did when I told them my dreams, or else they would be on board with us even now." With this, she turned and pointed to the lights of a nearby hotel just on the shore. "My beloved, all of our possessions are already packed below, and too many nights in cramped cabins might lead anyone to pay extra for a warmer bed and stouter walls, especially in such inclement weather as this." However, even as he said this, the doctor could see his words were making his bride more upset, not less. She was shaking now terribly, and not just from the cold. Pulling her close, he said softly, "My dear, it's too cold here on deck to make any plans, and we are both done in by the late hour and the stress of these uncertain days. Come back to the cabin with me. We will warm up and get a good night's sleep, and I promise you this, first thing in the morning, I will speak with Captain Burkett once again, and if he tells me the weather is still doubtful, then I will personally make arrangements with him to have our possessions waiting for us when we arrive, having traveled overland instead." With an obvious look of relief on her face, Kate Dupe pulled her gaze from the warm lights of Collingwood, and arm in arm went below decks with her beloved husband. And they were never seen again, for the weather finally did break, just enough that at 4 a.m. that morning, on November the 22nd, 1879, the 150-foot-long steamboat quietly set sail out of Collingwood Harbour without even a toot of its whistle to notify anyone of its departure some 3.5 hours ahead of schedule. The bride and her husband had no chance to change their minds or their plans, since they were both asleep in their cabin when the paddle wheeler headed out. The captain's quick departure after so long stuck in port stranded several passengers who had decided to spend the night at local hotels. And although Kate's story became a joke in Collingwood among some, several passengers had opted not to sail in the face of her foreboding premonition. And perhaps, in the end, they were the wisest of the ones in this story. For no one who set sail on the Waubuno that day would ever make it back to shore again. Dr. Duke's medical bag and a single glove belonging to his tormented bride, Kate, would be the only trace of them ever found again in the icy waters. All of the life preservers of the Waubuno would later be discovered among the wreckage. Not one had been used. There would be no survivors, and not a single body would ever be recovered. And so we are left with a great mystery. What happened to the passengers? Had the young bride truly foreseen their death and hers? It is still one of the great mysteries of our town's history, and one that will remain so, I'm afraid, until such time as the lake may choose to give up her dead.
That was A Sinking Feeling, written and told by Ken Mahar. The legend of the doctor's wife premonition is the oldest piece of lore presented in this series. This story has persisted since the sinking of the Waubuno in 1879. If you want to learn more about the history of this event, listen to the Collingwood Museum podcast, Stories from Another Day. Ken will be delving further into this topic in a new episode out November 2nd. Subscribe and listen on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for watching. Join us next time for another story of unsettling lore. And stay spooky, Collingwood.